Okay, and now, I know I don't have my lights on, but it's okay. Now we get back to chapter 25 in Anne of Avonlea. That's what AOA stands for. Chapter 25 is called An Avonlea Scandal. One blithe June morning, a fortnight after Uncle Abe's storm, Anne called slowly through the Green Gables yard from the garden, carrying in her hands 2 blighted stalks of white narcissus. "Look, Marilla," she said sorrowfully, holding up the flowers before the eyes of a grim lady with her hair coiffed in a green gingham apron, who was going into the house with a plucked chicken. "These are the only buds the storm spared, and even they are imperfect. I'm so sorry. I wanted some for Matthew's grave. He was always so fond of June lilies." "I kind of miss them myself," admitted Marilla, "though it doesn't seem right to lament over them when so many worse things have happened. All the crops destroyed as well as the fruit." "But people have sown their oats over again," said Anne comfortingly, "and Mr. Harrison thinks if we have a good summer they will come out all right, though late. And my annuals are all coming up again, but oh, nothing can replace the June lilies. Poor little Hester Gray will have none either. I went all the way back to her garden last night, but there wasn't one. I'm sure she'll miss them." "I don't think it's right for you to say such things, Anne. I really don't," said Marilla severely. "Hester Gray has been dead for 30 years and her spirit is in heaven, I hope." "Yes, but I believe she loves and remembers her garden here still," said Anne. "I'm sure no matter how long I lived in heaven, I'd like to look down and see somebody putting flowers on my grave. If I had a garden here like Hester Gray's, it would take me more than 30 years, even in heaven, to forget being homesick for it by spells." "Well, don't let the twins hear you talking like that," was Marilla's feeble protest as she carried her chicken into the house. Anne pinned her narcissi on her hair and went to the lane gate, where she stood for a while sunning herself in the June brightness before going in to attend to her Saturday morning duties. The world was growing lovely again. Old Mother Nature was doing her best to remove the traces of the storm, and though she was not to succeed fully for many a moon, she was really accomplishing wonders. "I wish I could just be idle all day today," Anne told a bluebird who was singing and swinging on a willow bough. "But a schoolma'am who is always helping to bring up twins can indulge in laziness, Birdie. How sweet you are singing, little bird. You are just putting the feelings of my heart into song ever so much better than I could myself. Why, who is coming?" An express wagon was jolting up the lane with 2 people on the front seat and a big trunk behind. When it drew near, Anne recognized the driver as the son of the station agent at Bright River, but his companion was a stranger, a scrap of a woman, who sprang nimbly down at the gate almost before the horse came to a standstill. She was a very pretty little person, evidently nearer 50 than 40, but with rosy cheeks, sparkling black eyes, and shining black hair, surmounted by a wonderful beflowered and beplumed bonnet. In spite of having driven 8 miles over a dusty road, she was as neat as she had just stepped out of the proverbial bandbox. "Is this where Mr. James A. Harrison lives?" she inquired briskly. "No, Mr. Harrison lives over there," said Anne, quite lost in astonishment. "Well, I did think this place seemed too tidy. Well, much too tidy for James A. to be living here, unless he has greatly changed since I knew him," chirped the little lady. "Is it true that James A. is going to be married to some woman living in this settlement?" "No, oh no," cried Anne, flushing so guiltily that the stranger looked curiously at her, as if she half suspected her of matrimonial designs on Mr. Harrison. "But I saw it in an island paper," persisted the fair unknown. "A friend sent a marked copy to me. Friends are always so ready to do such things. James A.'s name was written in over New Citizen." Oh, that note was only meant as a joke, gasped Anne. Mr. Harrison has no intent of marrying anybody. I assure you he hasn't. I'm glad to hear that, said the rosy lady, climbing nimbly back to her seat in the wagon, because he happens to be married already. I am his wife. Oh, you may well look surprised. I suppose he's been masquerading as a bachelor and breaking hearts right and left. Well, well, James A., nodding vigorously over the fields at the long White House, your fun is over. I am here, though I wouldn't have bothered coming if I hadn't thought you were up to some mischief, I suppose. Turning to Anne, that parrot of his as profane as ever? His parrot is dead, I think, gasped poor Anne, who couldn't have felt sure of her own name at that precise moment. Dead? Well, everything will be all right then, cried the rosy lady jubilantly. I can manage James A. if that bird's out of the way. With which cryptic utterance she went joyfully on her way, and Anne flew to the kitchen door to meet Marilla. Anne, who was that woman? Marilla, said Anne solemnly, but with dancing eyes. Do I look as if I were crazy? Not more so than usual, said Marilla with no thought of being sarcastic. Well, then, do you think I'm awake? Anne, what nonsense has gotten into you? Who was that woman, I say? Marilla, if I'm not crazy and not asleep, she can't be such stuff as dreams are made of. She must be real. Anyway, I'm sure I couldn't have imagined such a bonnet. She says she's Mr. Harrison's wife, Marilla. Marilla stared in her turn. His wife? Anne Shirley. Then what has he been passing himself off as an unmarried man for? I don't suppose he did, really, said Anne, trying to be just. He never said he wasn't married. People simply took it for granted. Oh, Marilla, what will Mrs. Lynde say to this? They found out what Mrs. Lynde had to say when she came up that evening. Miss Lynde wasn't surprised. Mrs. Lynde had always expected something of the sort. Mrs. Lynde had always known there was something about Mr. Harrison. To think of his deserting his wife, she said indignantly. It's like something you'd read of in the States, but who would expect such a thing to happen right here in Avonlea? Sorry, gotta wet my whistle. This is an interesting chapter. Sorry about that gulp. Gulp. But we don't know that he deserted her, protested Anne, determined to believe her friend innocent till he was proved guilty. We don't know the rights of it at all. Well, we soon will. I'm going straight over there, said Mrs. Lynde, who had never learned that there was such a word as delicacy in the dictionary. I'm not supposed to know anything about her arrival, and Mr. Harrison was to bring some medicine for Thomas from Carmody today, so that will be a good excuse. I'll find out the whole story and come in and tell you on the way back. Mrs. Lynde rushed in where Anne had feared to tread. Nothing would have induced the latter to go over to the Harrison place, but she had her natural and proper share of curiosity, and she felt secretly glad that Mrs. Lynde was going to solve the mystery. She and Marilla waited expectantly for that good lady's return, but waited in vain. Mrs. Lynde did not revisit Green Gables that night. Davy arrived home at 9 o'clock from the Bolter place and explained why. I met Mrs. Lynde and some strange woman in the hollow, he said, and gracious how they were talking both at once. Mrs. Lynde said to tell you she was sorry it was too late to call tonight. And I'm awful hungry. We had tea at Milty's at 4, and I think Mrs. Bolter is real mean. She didn't give us any preserves or cake, and even the bread was scarce. Davy, when you go visiting, you must never criticize anything you're given to eat, said Anne solemnly. It's very bad manners. All right, I'll only think of it, said Davy cheerfully. Do give a fella some supper, Anne. Anne looked at Marilla, who followed her into the pantry and shut the door cautiously. You can give him some jam on his bread. I know what tea at Levi Bolter's is apt to be. Davy took his slice of bread and jam with a sigh. It's a kind of disappointing world after all, he remarked. Milty has a cat that takes fits. She took a fit regular every day for 3 weeks. Milty says it's awful fun to watch her. It's terrible. And I'm going to stop right there just because I got lots of other stuff to do today. So, hope to see you live at 3. Live at 3. Tea with me. Love y'all. Be sweet. Don't be ugly. See ya. Bye.